Hey there gamers, we just hit 5,000 subscribers on this channel, which is absolutely wild, so thank you so much. If I tried to draw 5,000 of you on this whiteboard, I would be here all day, but if I could, I would. I've been really overwhelmed with love and support lately, and I have a lot of content being prepared for the year, so stay tuned. The next couple of months I'm trying to move, which is going to take a lot of my time, but after that you're going to be seeing a lot of me around here. I sort of jumped in with 2 feet when it comes to posting on this channel, so I ended up kind of skipping introductions. So, I wanted to make a draw my life and kind of introduce myself to you.
You can make whatever excuses you want. We know you just like talking about yourself.
I was born in the year of our Lord 2000 AD in the desolate state of Utah. There's my mom, my dad, and 2 older sisters. I got a little sister a couple years later, officially making me a middle child, which explains a lot. Apparently as a baby I was completely silent and basically never cried. I learned to speak at around 18 months old, and according to my mom, I began spouting full sentences immediately and haven't shut up since. Around that age I also realized it was very hard for me to see. My left eye basically just barely works, so I started wearing glasses before I was even 2 years old. I also wore an eye patch on my right eye for a really long time to get my left eye to start working properly, which made me kind of look like some funky kid pirate. My mom homeschooled my sisters and I, so my childhood was filled with visiting museums, field trips to the zoo, and doing my homework in my pajamas. But it was also a lot of loneliness, which is actually something I complained about a lot since the moment I could find the words. I really wanted friends, and I started acting up and causing some problems in my family because I was really lonely. Luckily, my mom had a solution. When I was 5 years old, I auditioned for my very first community play. I was cast as the role of Mouse Number 6. I finally had people my age I could talk to and hang out with, and I did show after show after show with my new friends. When I was 8 years old, I was cast as Alice in a production of Alice in Wonderland. I don't know how many of you have stood alone on a stage in front of people, but it's an impossible feeling to explain. And there I was, taking my first bow on opening night in front of hundreds of eyes. It was terrifying. I loved it. And from that moment on, I was all in. I would eat, sleep, and breathe theater. My sisters all tried out theater for a while too, but eventually they got interested in other things. I stuck with it though. It became my entire life. I was set on going to Broadway and being a star. By the time I was a teenager, I had begged my mom for so long that I was allowed to enroll in public school. So I entered high school knowing basically nobody, but latched onto their theater program pretty quickly. Now, if you're not a theater kid, just know that there are usually a lot more girls auditioning for shows than there are boys. So when I was in a production of Les Mis, my director needed more people to play barricade boys. I offered up my services, as any good actor does, and my director told me I would need to buy a chest binder for my costume. I made one DIY because I was too afraid to ask my mom. And there I was, standing in front of my bedroom mirror at 15 years old, hair tucked into a hat and baggy hoodie, keeping a secret that I didn't even really understand yet. That night, I snuck out and walked to the gas station. I just wanted to have someone see me dressed the way I was, to let someone else in on the secret. And then I went home, took it all off, and didn't say a word. I didn't have the right words to explain my identity at the time, but I realized I felt different. I asked my friends at school to use a different name for me, something a bit more androgynous, and that was about it. I didn't get the information I needed for a really long time, but I got there. I also started YouTube in high school, making little vlogs in my bedroom to try and replicate people like Connor Franto or Dan and Phil. By the time I had finished junior year, I had gathered just over 1,000 subscribers. To me, that was the size of the entire planet, but senior year came and I had to put YouTube on hold to graduate. See, I hadn't really been doing well mentally. High school was really difficult for me for a lot of reasons, but theater was the main source of my problems. I'd finally begun to face the realization that I wasn't going to quote-unquote make it big on Broadway. My entire life, the plans I had been making for over a decade were falling apart. I got a cat to help with my mental health, and 5 years later, she is still my hero and my #1 fan. Around the time of my future life crisis, I took a film studies class and fell absolutely in love with movies, especially horror movies. To this day, they are still my favorite things to talk about, and I could literally go on forever about them if I could. The moment I turned 17, I began seeing every horror movie I could find, and realized that the reason I loved YouTube so much wasn't just being in front of the camera, but behind it too. I wanted to make movies. I discovered a new passion for movie sets and signed up to be an extra on as many sets as I possibly could. I loved seeing how the cameras worked and talking to the crew to figure out everything behind the scenes. After graduation, I downloaded a stupid little app called TikTok and started posting on it. I moved to college with my best friend at the time and started studying film and cinematography. In November 2019, 2 days after my 19th birthday, I was sitting at work when my heart started racing. It felt like I had had run a mile when I was sat there at my desk. Within minutes, I was in so much physical pain that I could barely speak. My heart felt like it was being crushed under a 50-ton weight. I called my roommate and was thankfully across the street from a hospital. By the time I got there, my heart rate was through the roof and nobody could figure out why. That night, I genuinely thought I was going to die. I was in the ER for 15 hours, running blood tests and taking x-rays and getting IV drips, but eventually my heart calmed down and they just sent me home. They couldn't figure out what was wrong, but it was an emergency room and I was taking up a bed, so I went home. I know it sounds cheesy, but after that experience, I started looking at my life a little differently. I actually listened to how I was feeling and the things that were happening around me instead of floating through the world like I had been for so long up until this point, focused on where I was going and spending no time actually learning about myself and who I am. And that's where I finally found the words to explain what I had been feeling for years. I was trans. That terrifying realization was made a lot easier with the help of my best friend, as well as my boyfriend at the time. I bought a binder, cut my hair, and finally started coming out to people. It felt like my life, for the very first time, was headed in a good, stable direction. I was sitting on the bed with my college boyfriend watching a movie when he got a call from his mom, asking him to move home. My little bubble, the safe space I had curated for the last year, disappeared. Shortly after, my roommate moved home too. I was left in an empty old apartment with my cat. I was working 2 jobs at the time, along with school, and suddenly both of my jobs were closed down indefinitely and school had moved online. I had no way to pay rent and no justification to live near campus, so I moved home. And due to some complicated situations, I also lost contact with my support system. This was a really bad time. I don't like to think about this year very much. I got COVID, which made my unknown heart condition worse, causing me to visit the ER for a second time. I dropped out of college because I flunked all of my online classes, and I felt like literally everything that had given me a purpose was gone. Well, almost everything. At this point, my TikTok had maybe 80,000 followers, which is a lot, but the majority of the growth happened when I wasn't really mentally around to process it. So when a TikTok mutual of mine, Mushtube, reached out and asked if I had ever heard of Twitch, I was intrigued. With what felt like no friends, no future, and no hope, I clicked go live. I had 3 people in my chat on the first stream, all from Mushtube, and I still remember all of their usernames. I discovered an outlet for talking to people, for creating. I had fun for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. I posted video of my streams on TikTok and went from 250 Twitch followers to 4.3 thousand overnight, and that number just kept on growing and growing and growing. My viewers were so supportive and loving, and I finally had a space to be myself and identify openly with who I really am. I started up YouTube again with a new audience and a new drive. I had already learned the basics of editing from YouTube in high school, as well as my, albeit short, stint in film classes. I realized I had an opportunity that very few people had. I could do what I love and have people to share it with. So, in October 2021, I released my first ever short film series here to this channel. And even though I haven't been the most consistent on here, you have no idea what plans I have in store. I have loved to perform and create literally since the moment I could speak, and I will never stop thanking you for giving me the space and time to do so. If you've made it to the end of the video, then you must actually care about what I'm saying, which is wild, so thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Whether I continue to make content for the next 20 years or I'm dragged into the oblivion tomorrow, thank you. You changed my life, and you gave me a place to call home. And trust me, we're only just getting started.